right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. Here, Michael Cohen here with you on the Sports Talk Nation. Knicks lose in Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals. They get clobbered by the Indiana Pacers, 125-108. As the season comes to an end, Indiana on their way to the NBA Finals. And let's just be fair here, folks. This is one reason why I did pause and didn't do kind of a reaction to Game 5 when the Knicks won that game the other day, because I knew this was going to be what this series was going to be about. It was going to come down to this Game 6 and whether the Knicks could go out there on the road against an Indiana team that was certainly going to be ready to play in front of their home crowd, potentially for the final time this year, especially if the Knicks had won this game. That could have certainly turned the entire series around. So it was all about Game 6 at that point. And as a result, what we saw here was an Indiana team that just had a lot more, and not just energy, but they just played with much more finesse, much more speed than the Knicks did in this game. And the Knicks just had a very hard time, especially a good defensive team like the Knicks, had a very hard time dealing with the Pacers in this game. And really, they had a hard time dealing with them in this entire series, with the exception of Game 5, where the Knicks defense was spectacular in that game, and they held Tyrese Halliburton to just 8 points that game. He had a much different game this time, obviously, here in Game 6. 21 points, 13 assists, especially in the second half. He just took off in that second half and fourth quarter. They had no answer for the fast break. The Pacers outscored the Knicks 25-10 in fast break points. They couldn't keep up with them on the floor. And then you include the turnovers. The Knicks turned it over 18 times in this game. They had a lot of trouble with turnovers all series. And the Pacers in this game outscored the Knicks 34-13 in turnovers, points off turnovers. 34-13. That in and of itself, the points off the turnovers, the fast break points, is really where this game was decided. As I said, they just couldn't keep up with the speed of the Pacers in this game. Pascal Siakam, 31 points to lead the way. Then you're watching Obi Toppin in the fourth quarter hit big bucket after big bucket, especially down the stretch to ice this game for the Pacers as they pulled away. There was really nobody that the Knicks could defend that they could slow down. Every player in the starting lineup was on the positive of the plus-minus, okay? Meaning that every time they touched the floor, good things happened for the Pacers. Everybody was in a plus. In fact, Andrew Nembhard and Siakam both were at plus 25, and Halliburton at plus 24 when they touched the floor in this game. So that's how dominant the Pacers were here in Game 6. And the Knicks, look, they just struggled shooting. They hit only 9 of 32 from downtown. It's only 28%. They missed 9 free throws. They just made too many mistakes. The turnovers, as I just mentioned, and really outside of a good effort by OJ Anunoby, and outside of him, nobody else really got anything going offensively. Yes, you had 22 points from Karl Anthony Towns. Jalen Brunson gave you 19, but it just wasn't enough, especially in a night where the Pacers could taste it. They could taste it towards the end of that first half. You kind of felt the game start to, change, start to push towards Indiana at half, right? The Knicks were playing really close with Indiana the entire first half. It was always like 1 or 2 or 3 point difference between the two of them. And then when Indiana got on a bit of a hot streak there towards the end of that first half, where they took what was a 1 point game and turned it into a 6 point game, 58-52, you started to feel slipping away a little bit for the Knicks in that first half. And then in the second half, it was just all Pacers as they extended their lead to as many as 21 points. And the Knicks now, of course, their season is now over. So Indiana earns it. They earned their trip to the NBA Finals to take on what is a very good Oklahoma City team. They'll have they're certainly going to have that could be a hard time there for Indiana. We'll see. But the Pacers have been up to the challenge all postseason. We'll see how that goes in the finals. But for the Knicks, it's now all about the offseason. And I think this one thing that this East Finals did show you is that this is a good Knicks team. They have, of course, some good players. They have a great player, obviously, in Jalen Brunson. But they need help. They need another shooter. They need someone else to kind of take some of the pressure off of Brunson of being the guy all the time. And they really need to fix that bench. That Knick bench just isn't getting it done. it got to the point where you had to put Josh Hart on the bench just to get something going there and change things up in that lineup. But they just take a look at this series. I mean, you have guys coming off the bench for Indiana that are contributing every single night, every single game. Guys like Obi Toppin, who at one point was with the Knicks at one point just a couple of years ago. But Thomas Bryant putting up 11 points. T.J. McConnell had his moments in this series coming off the bench. Benedict Marthuin had a huge series, especially in Game 4 of this series. So they had guys come off the bench that just all contributed. The Knicks didn't exactly have that on a consistent basis, with the exception of Miles McBride at one point. So they got to fix that as well. I'm interested. Now you take a look at the Knicks contracts going into next year. We know that obviously it's going to be very interesting to see what they're going to do with the contracts, because you have Karl Anthony Towns, who's going to be owed $53 million next year. It's a $59 million contract that he has. He has 2 years left in his deal, and then a player option in 27-28. You know Jalen Brunson's not going anywhere. He's kind of underpaid of the three of them at $34 million. Mikal Bridges is making $24 million next year. There's going to be some changes you would have to think that Leon Rose and company are going to have to make. And then what are those changes going to be like to fix this team, make it more manageable as far as the dollars and cents are concerned? A lot of rumors abound that Giannis Antetokounmpo could be a potential piece that the Knicks would have to trade for. Now, they're going to have to give up a lot to get him. You know, maybe Karl Anthony Towns has to go back in a trade. Maybe Mikal Bridges as well. Maybe Josh Hart. Obviously, draft picks. They're going to have to give up a lot to get Giannis Antetokounmpo from the Milwaukee Bucks. And it's not like the Knicks are going to be the only team out there looking at him. Even the Brooklyn Nets, who have a slew of draft picks for this year's draft, are going to be looking at him as well. And there's other teams involved in that. They're going to be involved in the sweepstakes, like Miami. I saw a rumor, potential Miami Heat. Maybe the San Antonio Spurs. There are going to be a lot of teams looking in at Giannis. So if the Knicks don't get him, where else are they going to go for some help? Because they're going to need that moving forward into next year. But for looking back at this season, and look, it was a successful year, folks. I know it sucks to lose in the Eastern Conference Finals. It's disappointing. I know Knicks fans wanted to get back to the finals for the first time in a long time. I know a lot of Knicks fans, especially after the way this playoff started, and especially after that series against the Celtics, thought that the Knicks were going to make that run to the finals and win it all, but it didn't happen. It was still a successful season. The first time in a quarter century getting back to the Eastern Conference Finals after years upon years upon years of bad basketball. The last couple of years, the Knicks have been really, really good and have been exciting to watch, especially in the postseason. So we'll see. The pressure is going to be on them next year. A lot of people are going to be expecting them to finish the job, if you will, and get to the finals. We'll see what happens at that point. That's further down the road. But still, for this year, a successful year for the Knicks. I know this sucks, but when you look back at it, you're going to appreciate everything that you saw this year from these New York Knicks. Like and subscribe. We'll talk to you next time.